Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Joel Alberts. I'm the Executive Director at the Lensic Performing Arts Center in Santa Fe. I am sitting here on the Lensic stage today. We, like most performing arts centers across the country, of course, are running things a lot differently during this strange time of life. But the Lensic stage has remained open and vital throughout this process. We've been engaging our community and people across this area and region and across the United States as Santa Fe is such a global destination with a lot of music and talent that have, as we've had performances and things that have taken place from the stage that we're sharing online, and trying to keep our community as involved and possible and engaged in the performing arts, which of course have had a remarkable impact on people's lives as we've moved into different ways of living. The Lensic is a community-supported performing arts center. We are a true nonprofit. Obviously, with ticket sales going away, we've lost about $2 million of our revenue every year, which is a big impact on what we're able to do for Santa Fe. If you have ever thought about contributing to a performing arts center and want to see your name in a playbill when we all get back online, now is a great time to do that. There's some information available about how you can make a donation to the Lensic. You can find it on the YouTube page that you are looking at right now, and you can also visit us at lensic.org for some more information about all of the things that we do. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what the Lensic is for this community and the resources that we provide here. The Lensic offers over 200 events a year. We support a number of performing arts nonprofits in the community, and have an incredible variety of programs and activities that take place on this stage every year. We're also deeply engaged in arts education in Santa Fe. The Lensic has over 18,000 school kids involved in education activities that range from a variety of different things, including school matinees that take place here on the stage, but also artists going into the schools. We have a technical theater internship program and an amazing program called Lensic Future Voices, which is a film and photography program where students submit work that they created in their schools. We help the teachers provide the resources and instruction and judge the students on all of the amazing things that they create every year. And the last of the programs that we do is one that's also very special and dear to us. The Lensic is a host of Lensic Hocus Focus. We work with magician Kevin Spencer, who has a background working with students who are on the autistic spectrum. And we bring arts out into the schools to work for this deeply underserved community and provide things that help them not only succeed better in the classroom, but help them think more creatively. Oh my gosh, that was a big word to get to. Ironic that I nailed that one. And to think more creatively and to be better engaged in the things that they do. We are a vibrant and important place in downtown Santa Fe. I like to think of the Lensic as the heart of Santa Fe, and it really is our community that makes a big difference for us. So it's nice for us to be able to engage with you today. We are looking forward to having everyone back in this space as soon as possible, because it really is that sense of community that makes the biggest difference. And it's nice to have you all here, and it's nice to welcome some new people to that Lensic community as well. I'd like to introduce our special guests with us today. First of all, I'd like to introduce John Andrews. John is much beloved in the Santa Fe area. John has a background in academia. He was also the director of academic programs at the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. He served on a national advisory panel for the BBC's The Shakespeare Plays, which was something that I engaged in when I was taking Shakespeare back in college. We watched every one of those filmed plays as a part of my class activities, and it was an incredible experience. And in 1987, the most important is he is the founder of the Shakespeare Guild, which is a global nonprofit organization to foster a deeper appreciation of the world's most influential writer. We'd also like to introduce our special guest today, F. Murray Abraham. As you know, this Academy Award-winning actor for his role as Salieri in Amadeus has been a household name and a much beloved actor for generations. Murray was born in Pittsburgh, but grew up in El Paso. So he is a son of the Southwest as well and has some terrific roots in this area. His other on-screen roles include roles in All the President's Men, Scarface, The Name of the Rose, Bonfire of the Vanities, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and Homeland. And what a lot of people don't know is that he has an extensive career as well on stage, playing such iconic roles as Bottom, Creon, Iago, Lear, Macbeth, Malvolio, Shylock, and Uncle Vanya. Murray, it is a delight to have you here. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Very nice. Well, it is such a strange time of life, and I know we're going to talk about some Shakespeare. We're going to talk about some, and you have a few things to share. How are you all holding up with your life at home these days, and how has life been treating you?
Well, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, it's exciting because I live on Lower Fifth Avenue between the two congregating places where protesters gather and then march up and down Fifth Avenue. And it's great to be a part of it, but not join it just in case, being on the safe side. But it's fine because it gives me a chance. It gives me a chance to do some reading, do some studying, because I'm part of I'm in a series, and that takes a lot of time. But we're not shooting the series now. We did one segment remotely. But anyhow, you didn't mention two other filmmakers, the Coen brothers and Wes Anderson, who is a fellow Texan, in Grand Budapest Hotel. It's a wonderful movie. Anyway, that's enough about me. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to see your theater. And I really hope that there'll come a time when I can perform there because it looks so inviting. What can I tell your patrons that will prompt them to open up their pockets and pour some money at you? Throw some money.
I think you are saying all of those good things right now, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. One of the things for me, and I'd love your feeling about this as well, because it seems that when we all sort of shut down, when life moved home for everyone, it seemed that the performing arts really stepped up in a big way. How do you feel the performing arts, how do you feel like that's changed? And what do you think that role is going to be for us when we start reopening and everybody starts going back to life?
That is a projection I can't even imagine. But I can tell you this, I've been a part of many of these Zoom sessions for different theaters across the country because I've been around a long time. I know a lot of these people. And I've been performing quite a bit on Zoom. And it's thrilling that they've gathered forces at this time, considering, the state that things are in. I can't imagine not having a theater. How we accomplish that is another thing. But the fact is that the people need the theater, live theater. They don't talk about it in terms of the ancient tradition. I mean, in the cave days, those people, remember this, they had to bring torches into the cave in order to paint on the walls. They needed art, right? They went through the trouble of bringing the torches in there. They must have been dancing in there and telling stories, or grunts, or chant. I'm sure of it. I'm certain. That was the first theater. How different is that than the theater today, where we all go into this dark room, we bring in our own lights, and we all watch somebody perform. It's one of the last vestiges, I think, of a human connection. With a movie, I love movies, but performing them as well as watching them. But in a movie, the film doesn't need anyone there. It can be an empty house, and the film will run and run and run. That's not true of the theater. If you have a theater that's empty, it's not a performance. It's a rehearsal. I need them. I'm not acting for them. I'm acting with them. And I think people need that, to be reminded of their common humanity. I feel that strongly about it, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. So you wrote a lovely foreword for a Shakespeare collection that John pulled together.
Yes.
And you can even hold it up.
I have it here.
John can see it. It's wonderful. But you talked about the experience of patrons coming up to you afterward, after a show, saying, we're going to come and see this again. How does that sense of community for you when you engage with audiences and you see immediately that impact that they've had in sharing the space with you? I love the word conspire, the breathing together.
Yeah.
And that there's something very special about that. What is that experience for you?
Well, this is the reason I do it. I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than hearing an audience laugh, for example, or to hear them weep. But I must tell you, you also gamble that they're going to throw you off the stage too. I mean, don't forget that part.
Right. There's
some of them come back afterwards and they say the other thing. Like, anyway, that's the chance you take.
Murray, one of the things I remember is in your foreword to A Midsummer Night's Dream, you were talking about how remarkable it was that people in the Delacorte Theater in Central Park were laughing their heads off at 400-year-old jokes.
Yeah. Isn't that astonishing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, really, he was a pretty good writer.
I think he might last.
It might catch on.
By the way, we did that downtown at the public theater. It wasn't in the park.
Oh, it wasn't.
It was part of Joe Papp's. He was going to do the entire canon. He was going to do 6 plays a year for 6 years, and Midsummer was the first play. The second one was Julius Caesar, but we were such a success that they kept holding us over and over and over, so that Julius Caesar was running at the same time we were running. And we were in a theater that had a kind of a balcony that connected to the other theater. And when we did, the Mechanicals did that funny bit at the end of the play. The cast of Julius Caesar would come with their short skirts and their togas. They would come each night and watch our show. That's how funny it was.
Yes.
I'm very proud of that.
Yes. Do you prefer comedy or tragedy? Do you have any sense of which is better?
If you have a choice, you have to do both. You have to balance.
Yes.
It's like doing a movie too. You do a movie, you do a play, and then you do it. But there are certain plays I want to do again before I die. I want to do Lear one more time. I would really like to do, I think one more Shylock. Yeah.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
This feels like a perfect segue. I understand you have some Shylock you'd like to share with us too while we're talking about it.
I would be delighted. This is this is his most famous speech. He has decided that he is going to take a pound of Antonio's flesh, and he's asked, what can you do with it? He says, bait fish withal. If it will feed nothing else, it will feed my revenge. He has disgraced me and hindered me $500,000, laughed at my losses, mocked at my gains, scorned my nation, thwarted my bargains, cooled my friends, heated mine enemies. And what's his reason? I am a Jew. There's not a Jew eyes. There's not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, passions, senses, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his sufferance? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his grievance be? Why? Revenge. The villainy you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instruction. You know, it's interesting that as much as I love that speech, there's one word I always stumble on, and I stumbled on it this time again. So what you saw was a live performance, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
That was wonderful. So I'm going to say to the audience that we have at home, if you do have some questions that you'd like to bring to Murray, just please put them in the comments section on the YouTube live stream, and we are looking through those, and we'll be bringing some questions to him. And I actually have one that came. So how would you change your performance of Shylock from? How would you change your performance of Shylock from your first interpretation?
Well, I'm a different man. I would bring all of the years I've lived between then and now. It's as though each night when I did the performance then, it was different because I was a day older. I had learned another. That's the equation. That's one of the reasons also I like to do long runs. It gives me a chance to mature. I don't know how it would come out differently, but I feel much more strongly about certain things now than I did before, what with the political situation we find ourselves in. And that's why Lear is also important. Yeah. Anyhow, I would just bring my life.
That makes good sense. Are there any roles that you've had that you feel like you've made a longer or that you've grown more with in your time playing that character?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lear was a big advance for me. I learned a lot. But the Scottish play, that was a big lesson because I realized that you have to be in top condition, which I'm in pretty good shape, but I learned how to play it. I didn't have time before, and I didn't do it properly. I learned a lot, but I didn't really accomplish it. I think that play, in fact, is more difficult than Lear because there's no rest. It should be done in one act. It should be done like a rocket. There should be, because it's about he says sleep. You can't sleep. No one should be allowed to rest in that play. And that takes a great deal of energy. But my great accomplishment, really, the one that is cemented in my career is, because I'm good at comedy, that's not a problem. But it was playing Roy Cohn. That was a big discovery because I didn't like the man at all and I had trouble playing him until I finally realized that you can't play someone you don't like, not properly. And I committed myself finally to his evil, to his really ugly insides. And when I did that, the audience really responded positively to me. Interesting concept. I gave myself to the evil, and it was magnetic. Interesting thing, isn't it? How people can be magnetized by evil, even if it's harmful to them. We're finding that today, I think.
I agree. So I'd read that that you'd had a conversation with Nathan Lane, who had played that role. It was a much different interpretation.
Well, I never saw his performance, I'm sorry to say. I've done comedy with him, Terence McNally's play. I think he's one of the great comedians of our day. So I can't comment on his Roy Cohn. I can tell you this, I don't think anyone's ever played it better than I have. But that's what every actor says, so disregard that.
So, not to jump around too much, but going back to your life in El Paso,
yeah.
When we first made our arrangements for you to be with us today, I shared something in my social media about this, and I have a good friend who works for TheaterWorks in New York. He's their artistic director, and he immediately wrote back, about a beloved alumni. And for people who don't know TheaterWorks, it's an organization that's deeply involved with arts education and bringing plays out to young audiences across the country. I'm curious about your own arts education. How did you fall into theater? And what was that transition for you? When did you first have that first connection with a performing arts event? And when did you know that this was in your blood?
It was fate. That's all I can say, because we're blue collar people, family. My family is steel workers and coal miners, and my father was a mechanic, and that was in my future, I think. And I was kind of a hoodlum, a small time, silly hoodlum. And I was just anxious to get out of high school and take off. And I took speech and drama. It seemed like a simple thing and easy to pass. And that was when I discovered acting, because the teacher, Lucia P. Hutchins, God bless her, changed my life. She said, you should try this. I mean, generally, teachers didn't want to have me in their class. I was always making noise. Anyhow, the point is, she saw something. She introduced me to the theater. My life changed instantly, completely. I knew exactly where I belonged. And I won an award in Best Actor in Texas. It was a contest. I got a scholarship to go to Texas Western, which is now, it was the Texas College of Mines. It's now University of Texas at El Paso. And the scholarship was for $100. It was enough. Otherwise, I don't think my father would ever allow me to go to pay for my education as an actor. That wasn't what he had in mind. So it was all her. But once she introduced me to the theater, there was never a doubt in my mind.
What do you think she saw in you as a
I
young?
don't know. I just think it was a gift from heaven. I can't imagine anyone paying any attention. She must have seen the pain. She must have seen the need to show off. And this was a perfect opportunity. I don't know. It was real good luck.
Yeah. Do you still feel like you bring some of that El Paso foundation into what you do?
Absolutely. All my friends were Mexican. I used to go to Juarez all the time because a lot of them had family there, and we used to go across the border freely. It was not like it is now. It was comfortable. I grew up 2 blocks from the Rio Grande. I've always felt like I have a Mexican soul, as well as a Syrian soul and an Italian soul.
Very good. So I have a couple of other questions here. And again, I apologize. We're bouncing around a little bit, but I really like this one. Is there a difference in how you approach Shakespearean characters in modern dress as opposed to traditional clothing of the era?
That's a good question, because what it speaks to is an American's concept of how Shakespeare should or shouldn't be performed. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Shakespeare with an American accent, as far as I'm concerned, is the only way to do it. It's much more muscular, I think. I think it's much more exciting. And it's possibly, the accent is possibly closer to the way Shakespeare spoke. There's some conjecture about that. Appellation, I think. Am I right, John? Anyway, I think that there's no difference. I think that whatever clothes you're wearing has nothing to do with the character you're playing. I mean, the clothes, of course, do, but your concept of the character, the truth of that character that lives inside of you, it's the same no matter what you're wearing, or if it's a comedy or a tragedy. Mm-hmm. It's got to be the truth. That's what we're looking for. Because when you find the truth, which doesn't happen all the time, but when you experience it on stage, which is why you're doing it, that's why I'm doing it, each person in the audience recognizes that, and they experience it in their own terms. That's how intimate the truth is.
That's great. I had another, this seems like a logical next question. This is from Reed. He is the high school drama teacher at Santa Fe High. And his question was, would you rather watch or listen to Shakespeare with a mediocre performance but great scansion or rhythm, or an incredibly emotive performance with no scansion?
That's a trick question. I think mediocre is not acceptable. But as a teacher, I think scansion is very important. And as an actor, I think it really points to the meaning. I think it's absolutely essential. But if I have a choice, I would rather not watch a mediocre performance.
Right. So the answer is C.
How about a good performance in good scansion? How's that?
That sounds like a great a great a great option there. So and I also had some questions from Carol Farkas, who works with a terrific group in town called the Upstart Crows, and this is a youth theater group that performs Shakespeare. And she was wondering a little bit that they are currently her students right now are returning to rehearsing scenes from Othello, which they'd put on pause back in March. And the kids would love to know a little bit more about your insights on the character Iago and your thoughts on race-blind performances of the play.
Well, I think that there are so many references to his color. I don't know how you can do it without him being a dark-skinned person. I mean, I disagree with that. I think otherwise there's not a problem with casting without being color conscious at all. But it's necessary that he be different from the rest of the cast. I think it's absolutely essential. If you make everybody else black and him white, maybe you can make that work. I think you have my point.
Yeah.
But as far as them, you can't dismiss the racist nature of that play. I think you're missing the point. It's like playing The Merchant of Venice and skipping over some of the comments that are made about Jews. I think the harder you come down on their racism, the more sympathy you'll find for Shylock, and the more you'll understand that society.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Would you like to? I know that that you had some Lear as well, which will bring us to some current events that we can talk about as well, and the timelessness of Shakespeare, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm the spokesperson for the Multi-Faith Alliance for Syrian Refugees. My father came over to this country as a refugee in the early part of last century, he and his family. If they hadn't been allowed into this country, they would have died. No question, it was famine. And I think that it's a shame that we're closing our doors to these millions of people who need help, these refugees. Anyway, this is a very short piece that Lear speaks when he is on the heath in the storm. And he says, "Poor naked wretches, wheresoe'er you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness defend you from seasons such as these? Oh, I have ta'en too little care of this. Take physic, Pomp. Expose thyself to feel what wretches feel, so thou mayst shake the superflux to them and show the heavens more just." The interesting thing about doing Shakespeare on a Zoom and this close is that it opens up other possibilities, because the intimacy that this invites is not possible on the stage. And it'll give a lot of actors insights into their characterizations when they stop doing it for Zoom and take it on stage. I think they're going to have a richer, deeper experience. And these Upstart Crows, I don't know how they're rehearsing together. I'm delighted to hear this, by the way, but I suggest that they try to reach each other remotely from time to time to test that intimacy. I hope I'm not stepping on any director's toes.
Oh, I think that's very, very thoughtful. There's been a lot of things that talk about the hyper awareness that you get when you're having a Zoom conversation, that there are a lot of things when you're having a face-to-face with people, a lot of indications from their eyes and things that you miss. But when you're in this very isolated setting, you pick up everything.
Yes.
Do you find that your experience in acting for film also and vice versa, I guess.
Yes.
Do you have, or is it like you have to shut off part of yourself when you go from one to the other in order to make things work right?
It's a different technique, but essentially it's still the same thing as it is on stage. It's the truth is what we're talking about. The difference is that you are really, as my clock, I have to try to be precise. It's a size difference as much as anything else. And if any of these students or anyone is thinking about trying to find out what that difference is between film and the stage, is they should set up a couple of cameras, get some friends, with your iPhones, and perform a speech that you've prepared for the stage. Just prepare, do it full out, and then study it. And you will learn very quickly what you can do and can't do. You find out how you look, you find out what your best side is, you find out how your voice comes through and where you can modulate it. And you'll learn a great deal in a very short time. But the difference essentially is that with a camera, it's voyeuristic. It's as though someone's looking at you through a keyhole. And that, if you can think in those terms of being extremely private, the more private you are on camera, the more powerful you'll come across on film.
Murray, have you ever done any directing?
No, I haven't. I teach from time to time. That's as close as I've come. Mm-hmm. My problem with directing is that I always want to jump up and act. That's not a good thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me show you how it's done. Well, you see, that doesn't work.
Right. No, but it sounds to me as if that's not what you're doing. You're suggesting how an actor gets into a role, and instead of really imposing anything, you're trying to open up new avenues of interpretation.
I've been invited, and I think that I would like to try it. I think I have something to offer. Yes, I intend to do it.
And if you were to have a White House performance, heaven forbid, what would you take to perform there? Would it be the speech you just read from Lear, or would there be something else?
I think I would like to do that and the Shylock speech, because that speaks to racism too.
Yes.
But I think that some of Lear would be important. Yes, I would like to do that. I have performed at the White House, by the way.
And when was that?
Oh, the first Bush.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very charming apartments up there. Yeah, I sang a song and I told a joke.
I love it. You mentioned that you had a sonnet or two that you wanted to do.
Thank you, John. Let's see. Let me look in John's book. Here's a sonnet. I'll do one. Now, the sonnets are so highly interpreted. They're really a great acting lesson. There is one which can be done very graciously and beautifully and romantically. And I think I'll choose that one for an example, as an example. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters what an alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon be proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Now, that's one way. Now, if you think about this in a much more dramatic way, think of it as though he's a lawyer and he's defending a position. And he says, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when adulteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh, no. It is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. You see the difference? So if you're studying the sonnets, remember, there's no one way to do it. There's your way.
So do you ever just pick them up and try a bunch of different readings, think of a character and how they would read it?
The first thing I do is I really just try to understand them. They're not really, they're tricky. It's when scansion begins to play a very important role. But that's a sure way to understand what Shakespeare's writing. Follow the beat. You'll find it in the text. After that, when you really are up and running with it, then you can start playing with it.
Couple more questions here. First of all, this is an entire change here. We have someone who wrote in, loved you as Daradal. Did you enjoy playing that character?
Oh, he's a wonderful character. I think he was a great character. I was so disappointed I wasn't in the last season. They left him in prison. But I'll tell you something interesting about that character. I loved him. I thought he was legitimate and honest with himself. But I also thought that you couldn't figure out who he really was. So I mentioned, after a couple of segments, I mentioned to the costume department, the wardrobe, I said, I think this guy wears ladies' underwear. And they sewed some lace on my panties. I mean, what can I tell you? I can say that now because, the show's over now.
Probably could have said it then, and it would have been. So, and then another sharp listener asked, "What was the joke you told to Bush Sr.?"
I think that's private.
Okay.
It was a Texas joke. It was a Texas joke, and he appreciated it. You want to hear it?
It's up to you.
It's not a dirty joke.
That's fine.
This Texan and this Virginian meet at a party, and the Texan says, "So, how big is your spread down there in Virginia?" He says, "Oh, I've got about 2,000 acres." He said, 2,000 acres? Shoot. He said, "Listen, back on my range back in Texas, I get into my pickup truck when the sun comes up, and I start driving, and I drive and I drive. I drive all day long, and when the sun goes down, I am still on my own land." And the Virginian says, "Yeah, I had a truck like that once." That's it.
That's fantastic. And there is the famous Texas accent that I've heard that you spent a lot of time trying to rid yourself of.
It was more Mex-Tex. It was more Spanish accent.
Of course. It's beautifully done now. That's great. So we have a bit more time here, I suppose, today. So I had I was maybe a good way to, I don't know, this is maybe not the best. So I was reading in a playbill bio of yours for when you were It's Only in It's Only a Play. And I wonder if you'd be willing to talk about one of the featured roles that you mentioned in there as a Macy's Santa.
Yeah, my first job in New York.
You seem a little too. I played a Santa once as well, and you and I seem to share a slender, much more European Santa Claus kind of look. How was this for you?
Oh, it was. I really like kids for one thing. But it was a job. I mean, I was here in town for less than a month and I had a job. I mean, that was the first thing. I think it was $175 an hour. I'm not sure. But I loved it. I had a good time. I went so far as to learn how to say Merry Christmas in many languages. I kept a little pad there. I'd ask the parents what language the kid was. And I would say Merry Christmas to him in his language. And they were always shocked. Yeah, I took it seriously.
I bet you learned a lot of improvisational theater in doing this as well.
Yes, indeed.
Very good. Does how much does that thinking on your feet continue to be a part of the roles that you play, and what creativity do you like to bring into?
Oh, it's just part of the thrill. It's part of the danger of doing it on stage. It's what's missing in movies. You know, if you miss it, you go back and you shoot again. I did live TV, or I did live soap opera when I first got to New York. That was pretty exciting. I was so excited the first day, CBS up on 57th Street. And I was talking and asking, I was, I had 2 or 3 lines, that's all. I was really nervous. And just before we started to shoot, the guy leans over and says, "Remember, Murray, there are 17 million people watching you." Yeah. Part of the fun is the danger. Because there have been people who get up and shout in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, you gotta deal with it, man.
Right.
I mean, Nathan is outrageous that way. I mean, he'll stop and he'll go out and says, "If you don't put that phone off, I'll come and take it away from you." You know, that kind of thing.
That's very good. And one more question. We've danced around your most famous role. And the question is, now, I guess, getting close to 40 years on, 35 years on from playing Salieri and Amadeus, what is your relationship to that character, and to how does it? Do you listen to Mozart? What's your?
Oh, sure, yeah. I listen to Salieri too.
Yeah.
But Mozart. One of the things I discovered about Mozart, because I studied, hard, and I listened to the music over and over again, is no matter how many times you listen to those passages, they never got old. They always worked. That was a great discovery for me. He's great. But the thing about that part is that it's so well written. I mean, it's not a coincidence that every man who has played that role, the man who originated it in London, the man who did it here in New York, and me in the movies, each one of us won the top honor that year where he played. I mean, it's not a coincidence. It's got to be the material, as well as the actor, of course. You can't miss with that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I love him. I thought that Salieri had a great sense of humor about his whole life. He was funny. It was a tragedy, and he learned to laugh at it. But an interesting phenomenon is that Tom Hulce lives across the street from me. Isn't that extraordinary? Mm-hmm. And also, I was shooting Scarface while I was shooting Amadeus. So I was flying from Prague to Hollywood back and forth because the contracts overlapped. And it happens that Brian De Palma, the director, is 2 blocks from me on Fifth Avenue. So it's a small world. I don't know. I'm running off at the mouth. I'm sorry.
No, that's those are interesting factoids for everyone to bring to their next cocktail conversation whenever we get back to those things as well. But it's, one of the things that about him is that I've always thought was that he set the bar so incredibly high. And it almost I was appreciating you saying that that there was a humor about him, because it almost felt like there was nothing he could do right, and that he understood that he failed again.
Yeah, and he carried on. Do you remember? It's a long time ago, but in the opening of the film, the first time you see him at this advanced stage after having tried to kill himself, what is he doing? He's composing. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a certain sad greatness in that. He refuses to give up. He still is looking for inspiration. I love that about him. Yeah.
Murray, I seem to recall that you wrote a letter to the New York Times about Salieri. Wasn't it in response to an article about Salieri's music?
Yes, it was, I think, New York Magazine, I think. Not the Times, but the magazine.
Oh, the magazine, yes.
And it was a very flattering article, and I wrote a whole thing about thank you for letting the world know that he wrote some pretty good music. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm very defensive about Salieri. I'm very protective
Yes.
on him.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is there any role that you haven't played that you would like to do?
I'll tell you something. I love the classics and I always return to them. They're rewarding, but there's nothing like a new play. There's nothing like putting it up there and seeing if it flies.
Mhm.
I'm working on something now that's based on conversations between Norman Mailer and his son. And I was going to do that play just in time for the election this year. We were going to produce it on September. Well, that's not going to happen. But one of the lines that, that's my clock again. One of the lines that Norman Mailer said to his son about politics, this was in 2004. He said, "You can't stop a man who's never embarrassed by himself." And he said that a long time ago. And he's not talking about any one politician in particular.
Mhm.
That's politicians generally, I think, or captains of industry, blah, blah, blah. That's too bad. As you pointed out, things don't seem to change, do they? We have to keep
No.
punching.
So
Well,
I have, keeping an eye on our time here a little bit, I'm going to ask one more question of you, and this is following up on the conversation that we had before, but we have a note from Justin, who is with the Upstart Crows, who we discussed earlier. Their performance of the Scottish play will be done live, but because of COVID-19, they'll be masked and socially distanced. How might you adapt your acting to fit the limitations?
wow. I would really like to see that. How bold of them to go ahead and do it anyway. Good for you, upstarts. How upstart of you. Oh no, I can't wait to see it. I don't have a clue. I'd strap that mask on and jump right in. It shouldn't change anything. Do it the way you would if you had masks, if you didn't have masks, and then see what it feels like. That's all.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you know what the masks will do is force you to speak up and speak much more precisely and clearly so you're understood through the masks. That will be a great lesson, a great exercise. Okay. And that being particular about the pronunciation and being precise will, I think, help you toward the meaning of it as well. I wish you luck. I'd love to see it.
Fantastic. Well, Murray, as I said to you from the beginning, you are welcome in Santa Fe anytime. We would love to bring you to the Lensic when we can have a full room of people and we can appreciate seeing you in 3 dimensions as much as we've enjoyed our time with you today. A couple of things that I just wanted to say as we're wrapping up here. There was a quote of yours, Murray, that I found that I think creativity is spiritual. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing to say. You know, obviously the sense of community that we have here, the sense of creativity, and there's something really special about being in a theater space. For those of you who have ever walked into a theater when there's no one here, when it's just the ghost light on the stage, there is an energy about these rooms that is very special. And I think it comes from that bit of potential energy that exists on these stages, waiting for something to happen and turn it into kinetic. And you know, obviously the amazing talents that you've brought to stages and to screens over the years is made you a much loved person, which is has to be a real feather in your cap for your long career. So thank you again for your time. And I'll give you a chance to say goodbye as well, but I also wanted to say one more time to our audience. This is it's exciting for us to gather virtually today. As always, we are looking forward to the opportunity that we can start bringing people back together. Hopefully in the next few months, we will have some staged reopenings here at the Lensic, and as we have new rules and regulations that we can abide by, we're going to start seeing people through the doors to have a successful experience for you face-to-face with all of us again. So thank you again for joining us, and we really do appreciate all of the support that you have given and that hopefully you will give while operations are operating so differently. If you have a chance to go to lensic.org, we are engaging weekly with new video performances that are being done on stage, both with local musicians, but we're also giving students who didn't get that final performance before the schools closed down a chance to do that song or the monologue or the dance that they had all prepared. You can check out those performances online and in our weekly emails that we send out if you would like to sign up for those. And if you would like to help support the Lensic, there are amazing ways to donate and support your community-supported performing arts center. Thank you again for joining us. And Murray, do you have anything that you wanted to add as we're saying goodbye?
Yeah, it was fun. Good to see you again, John.
Good to see you, Murray. Thank you.
I would like to mention to everyone who's watching, send money.
Beautifully said. That's fantastic. John and Murray, thank you again so much for your time today, and to everyone out in our virtual community. Best of health to all of you. Continue to do the right things by our community so that we can all be back together soon. And thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon.
Bye-bye.